Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we have a really foundational mission for you. We're diving deep into the ethical bedrock of medicine itself.
That's right. We're not jumping into specific dilemmas right away. Instead, we're looking at the underlying philosophical theories, kind of the source code, if you will.
Exactly. The ideas that dictate how we even begin to define right and wrong in bioethics. It's about the why.
And that's crucial for you to understand because when you face a big moral question in medicine resource allocation, maybe, or end-of-life decisions, just knowing the rules isn't enough.
You need the why.
You need the why, the theory that explains why an action is right or wrong, or why a person even has value.
So we're going beyond just listing rules like be honest or don't harm. Those are more like moral principles.
Precisely. Moral theories are broader, more fundamental. They try to pin down what rightness or goodness actually means in the first place.
Okay, like a principle tells a surgeon, get consent.
Right. But the theory, maybe one based on respecting persons, explains why consent is vital. Because the patient isn't just, biological material. They're a person, an end in themselves.
Okay, let's unpack this then. How do philosophers carve up this theoretical landscape?
Well, there are two major splits typically. First, you've got theories focusing on right action or duty, what we call theories of obligation.
Okay, action focus.
And then you have theories focusing on good character, on being a good person. Those are virtue-based theories.
Character versus action. Got it. That's the second split.
The second one is huge for the action side. It asks, is an action right only because of its consequences?
That sounds like consequentialism.
Exactly. Or is an action right because of its inherent nature, or because it follows a certain rule or duty, kind of regardless of the outcome?
And that's deontology, or non-consequentialism.
That's the one. Consequences versus intrinsic nature or duty.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the consequences. That seems like a natural place to begin.
It is. And it leads us straight to the big one, utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism. Probably the most influential consequentialist theory out there.
Definitely. In essence, utilitarianism says the right action is the one that produces the most beneficial balance of good over bad consequences for everyone involved.
For everyone. That sounds demanding.
It is. The core demand is impartiality.
Yeah.
You have to step outside your own perspective, your own biases.
Like a neutral observer.
Exactly. A strictly impartial spectator giving equal weight to everyone's interests, trying to maximize the overall good or utility.
Okay, but that sounds, well, paralyzing. Do utilitarians really calculate the good and bad of every single little action, every conversation, every decision?
That's where the theory kind of splits. You've hit on a key distinction. There's act-utilitarianism.
Act-utilitarianism. That sounds like judging each act individually.
Precisely. You look at a specific action in a specific moment and ask, does this particular act produce the best overall balance of good over bad right now?
Okay. And the alternative?
The alternative is rule-utilitarianism. This tries to avoid that constant calculation. It says the right action is one that follows a rule that, if followed consistently by everyone, would lead to the greatest good over the long run.
So, act versus rule. How does this play out in a real bioethics situation? Let's take that case from the source material. Johnny.
Right, the tragic case of Johnny, a 10-year-old boy with severe cerebral palsy.
He's in constant, terrible pain that doctors can't manage. And his parents are begging the physician for a lethal injection, just to end his suffering.
It's a heartbreaking scenario. Now, let's see how the two types of utilitarianism might approach this.
Okay, the act utilitarian first, looking only at this specific act.
An act utilitarian might potentially justify the lethal injection. They'd weigh the immediate factors, ending Johnny's immense suffering, relieving the parents' anguish. If they believe these outweigh the negative consequences, maybe potential legal issues if it's discovered, but perhaps manageable, then the act itself maximizes happiness or minimizes suffering in this instance.
So the individual act looks permissible through that lens.
Possibly, yes. But now consider the rule utilitarian.
They're not looking just at Johnny, they're looking at the rule.
Exactly. They have to ask, what if we adopted the rule? It's permissible to kill severely impaired children if they are suffering greatly.
Oh, the societal impact.
It could be devastating. Widespread fear, loss of trust in doctors, devaluation of vulnerable lives, the potential negative consequences for the entire healthcare system and society could be massive.
So the rule utilitarian would likely say no.
Very likely, yes. Even if the act itself might seem merciful in Johnny's case, the rule allowing it would cause far more harm overall. So the act is prohibited.
Wow. That really highlights the tension in relying purely on consequences. Sometimes the system seems to override the individual case.
It absolutely can, which leads us nicely away from consequences.
And into the world of duty, deontology, specifically Kant.
Right, Kantian ethics. It's really the polar opposite of utilitarianism in many ways. For Kant, morality isn't about consequences or happiness or even needs. It's about rationality and duty.
Following a moral rule just because it's the right thing to do.
Solely out of a sense of duty, yes. And the rule has to be rational and universally applicable.
And he has this mechanism for figuring out those rules.
No.
The categorical imperative. Bit of a mouthful.
It is, but the idea is powerful. It's basically a command that applies without exception. Do this regardless.
Okay, and the first version, the test.
The first formulation, often called the universal law formulation, gives you a test. Act only on that maxim through which you can at the same time will be here that it should become a universal law.
So the maxim is like the principle behind your action.
Yes. And the test is, can you imagine everyone acting on this principle all the time? Would it even be possible, or would it create some kind of contradiction?
Let's use the example, the lying promise. I need money, so I promise to pay it back, but I know I can't.
Okay, so the maxim is something like, when I need money, I'll make a lying promise to get it.
Now, universalize that. Everyone does it.
What happens? Well, if everyone made promises they didn't intend to keep, the very concept of promising would collapse. Nobody would believe promises anymore.
So my lying promise wouldn't even work. It's self-defeating.
Exactly. You can't consistently will that maxim to be a universal law because it destroys the practice it relies on. Therefore, the duty is, don't make lying promises.
That logical structure, it's elegant. And it leads to his other famous idea.
Yes, the second formulation, which is hugely important in bioethics, the principle of respect for persons.
Treat people as ends, not just means.
Precisely. Treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of any other, never simply as a means, but always at the same time as an end.
What does simply as a means mean, practically?
It means using someone like a tool, like an object, purely for your own goals, ignoring their own goals, values, and rationality, their personhood.
And this connects directly to things like informed consent.
Absolutely. You can't experiment on people without their informed consent, because that would be using them merely as a means to gain knowledge. You can't lie to patients. You can't force treatment on them against their rational will.
Because they are ends in themselves. Their autonomy matters.
Their rational nature demands respect.
Okay, Kant's system is powerful. But what about when duties clash? That's the classic problem for absolute rules, isn't it?
It is. The textbook example. Kant says never lie. But what if a murderer is at your door asking where your friend is hiding? If you tell the truth, you enable murder. If you lie, you violate a perfect duty.
You're stuck. If the duties are absolute, there's no way out.
Logically, yes. And that's where other approaches come in, trying to handle this reality of moral conflict.
Which brings us to principlism. Duchamp and Childress are the big names here, right?
That's right. Their approach is very influential in bioethics. It uses several core principles: respect for autonomy, beneficence,
Doing good.
nonmaleficence,
Avoiding harm.
and justice. But the key is that these principles are prima facie.
Prima facie, meaning at first sight.
Exactly. It means the duty applies unless it conflicts with another prima facie duty. When they conflict, you have to weigh them up and decide which duty is more important in that specific situation. That becomes your actual duty.
So in the murderer case, the duty not to harm might outweigh the duty not to lie.
That's how principlism would likely handle it, yes. It allows for flexibility.
But doesn't that open it up to criticism? How do you decide which principle is weightier? Is there a clear method, or is it just intuition?
And that is the main philosophical critique. Principlism doesn't offer a higher-level theory or strict procedure for how to weigh or rank the principles in conflict. Critics say it's more of a helpful checklist than a complete moral theory.
Okay, so principlism offers flexibility, but maybe lacks foundational rigor. Let's shift to a much older tradition. Natural law theory, NLT.
Right. Natural law theory has deep roots, going back to Aristotle and Aquinas. The core idea is that morality is grounded in nature, specifically human nature.
Discern through reason.
Yes. Reason allows us to perceive the natural inclinations or purposes inherent in human life. It's teleological, focused on goals or ends.
And these natural inclinations point towards basic goods.
Exactly. Things like preserving life and health, procreating and raising children, seeking knowledge, cultivating social relationships. Right actions are those that conform to these natural ends.
Now, how does NLT handle conflicting duties? Does it have a tool for that?
It does, a very important one, especially in Catholic bioethics,
Yeah.
the doctrine of double effect, or DDE.
Double effect. Okay, this sounds technical.
It has specific conditions. It says an action that has both a good effect and a bad effect might be permissible only if certain conditions are met. Crucially, the bad effect must not be intended.
Not intended, even if foreseen.
Correct. Let's break down the 4 conditions. 1, the action itself must be morally good or neutral.
Okay.
2, the bad effect must not be the means used to achieve the good effect. You can't do evil so that good may come. 3, the intention must be only for the good effect. The bad effect can be foreseen, but not desired or intended.
Intention is key.
And 4, the good effect must be at least equivalent in importance to or outweigh the bad effect. Proportionality.
Let's apply that. The classic example, pain relief versus euthanasia.
Okay. Euthanasia giving a lethal injection to end suffering. The action itself, killing, is seen as intrinsically wrong in NLT. The death is the intended means to stop the suffering. It fails the conditions.
Fails multiple tests there.
Yes. Now contrast that with giving high doses of morphine for severe pain, knowing it will likely shorten the patient's life.
Okay, condition 1, giving pain relief is good or neutral. Check.
Condition 2, the bad effect, hasten death, is not the means to the good effect, pain relief. The pain relief comes from the morphine's direct action, not from the death itself. Check.
Condition 3, the doctor's intention is solely pain relief, not causing death, even though death is foreseen as a side effect. Check.
Condition 4, relieving terrible pain is considered a sufficiently good effect to justify risking the foreseen but unintended bad effect of hastened death. Check.
So under DDE, the pain relief is permissible, but euthanasia isn't.
That's the traditional application, yes. A critical distinction.
Okay, one more theory focused on structure, but social structure this time. Rawls' contract theory.
John Rawls, very influential in political philosophy, and it has implications for bioethics, particularly justice in healthcare.
He uses that thought experiment, the original position.
Right. Imagine rational, self-interested people gathering to choose the basic principles for their society. But they are behind a veil of ignorance.
Meaning they don't know anything about themselves, their wealth, talents, race, religion, health status.
Nothing. They don't know where they'll end up in the society they're designing. Rawls argues this ignorance ensures impartiality. They'll choose principles that are fair to everyone, especially the least advantaged, because they might end up being one of them.
And what principles do they choose?
2 main ones. First, the equal liberty principle. Everyone gets the most extensive system of basic liberties compatible with similar liberties for all.
Standard liberal rights.
Yes. The second principle deals with social and economic inequalities. It has 2 parts.
Okay.
Inequalities are only okay if they are, 1, to the greatest benefit of the least advantaged members of society, the difference principle, and 2, attached to offices and positions open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity.
Fair equality of opportunity. That sounds like where healthcare comes in.
Exactly. Rawls suggests that to have fair equality of opportunity, people need to be able to function normally. Disease and disability hinder that.
So society has an obligation.
The implication is that a just society must guarantee access to at least a basic level of healthcare for everyone to maintain or restore normal functioning and ensure that opportunity isn't unfairly limited by health status. It's a justice argument for healthcare access.
Okay, that covers a lot of ground on obligation and justice. Now let's completely shift focus, away from actions and rules.
And towards character, virtue ethics.
With Aristotle as the main inspiration.
Largely, yes. Virtue ethics asks a different fundamental question. Not what should I do, but what kind of person should I be?
And the goal is eudaimonia.
Eudaimonia, often translated as happiness or flourishing. It's about living a fully realized, excellent human life. And virtues are the character traits that enable us to achieve that.
So right action is just what a virtuous person would do.
In that situation, yes. The focus is on cultivating virtues like courage, honesty, compassion, temperance.
And Aristotle said you don't just learn these by reading about them.
No, absolutely not. You become virtuous through habit and practice. You become brave by doing brave things repeatedly until it becomes part of your character. It's like learning a craft.
And he had that idea of virtue being a middle ground, the golden mean.
Right. Virtue usually lies between 2 extremes, 2 vices. One is a vice of deficiency, the other an excess.
Like curry.
Courage is the mean. The deficiency is cowardice, the excess is rashness or foolhardiness. The virtuous person finds the appropriate balance.
This focus on character, context, maybe relationships, it feels different from the impartiality of Kant or utilitarianism,
It does, and that leads into newer developments like the ethics of care.
often associated with Carol Gilligan's work, challenging the traditional justice perspective.
Yes. Ethics of care emphasizes empathy, compassion, responsiveness to needs, and the importance of specific relationships rather than abstract universal rules. It suggests that morality might look different when viewed through the lens of caring for particular others rather than applying impartial principles. There was debate about whether this represented a distinct female moral voice, but the core ideas about relationality are important.
And this connects to feminist ethics more broadly.
It does. Feminist ethics critiques traditional theories for often being biased, typically reflecting a male perspective and ignoring women's experiences or valuing abstract reason over relational concerns. It pushes for recognizing power dynamics, social context, inequalities, and understanding people as socially embedded selves, not just isolated rational agents. It's about reforming ethics to be more inclusive and realistic.
Wow. Okay, we've mapped out a huge range. Consequences, duty, principles, natural law, social contracts, character, care.
It's a lot of different ways to think about morality.
So with all these competing theories, how do we, or how does a student of bioethics begin to judge them? How do we know which ones hold water?
That's the next critical step. Philosophers use criteria of adequacy to evaluate moral theories. Generally, there are three main ones.
I'd say lay on us.
Criterion I, consistency with our considered moral judgments. These are our core moral beliefs, our moral common sense after careful reflection. Does the theory align with things we feel strongly are right or wrong?
Like slavery is wrong. A good theory shouldn't justify slavery.
Exactly. Criterion II, consistency with the facts of the moral life. Does the theory account for things like moral disagreement, the fact that we make moral judgments, that we sometimes feel conflicted?
It has to fit with our actual experience of morality.
Yes. And Criterion III, resourcefulness in moral problem solving. Does the theory actually help us figure out what to do in complex situations? Does it give useful guidance?
Okay, considered judgments, facts of moral life, resourcefulness. Let's apply Criterion I to the big theories. Utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism often runs into trouble with Criterion I, our considered judgments, especially concerning justice and rights.
Like that example you mentioned earlier, the researcher sacrificing a few patients to save thousands.
Right. Even if it maximizes overall happiness, our deep-seated sense of justice and individual rights screams that this is wrong. Utilitarianism seems to allow, or even demand, actions that violate fundamental fairness.
So it clashes with moral common sense there. What about Kant?
Kant also struggles with Criterion I, but for the opposite reason. His rules are too absolute.
The murderer at the door again.
Exactly. Telling the truth, even if it leads directly to murder, clashes violently with our considered judgment that protecting an innocent life is paramount in that situation. The absoluteness is the problem.
So the big simple theories have trouble matching our nuanced moral intuitions.
They often do, which leads to a really fascinating, almost paradoxical thought about the very nature of morality itself.
Okay, where are we going with this?
We're heading towards Susan Wolf's critique involving the concept of the moral saint.
A moral saint, someone who is perfectly moral.
As morally good as possible. Wolf imagines two types. The loving saint, who is saintly because their own happiness is making others happy. Think of a perfectly empathetic, altruistic person.
Okay, and the other.
The rational saint. This person acts purely out of duty, constantly sacrificing their own interests and desires for the sake of morality, even if it doesn't make them happy. Think Kant taken to the extreme.
So, perfect moral exemplars. Sounds admirable.
Admirable, perhaps. But Wolf's provocative argument is that being a moral saint is actually not a compelling or attractive personal ideal.
Not attractive. Why not? Isn't maximum morality the goal?
Wolf argues that to be maximally moral, the saint has to crowd out almost everything else that makes for a rich, well-rounded human life. Think about non-moral virtues or valuable interests. Developing a cynical wit, becoming a gourmet cook, appreciating high fashion, dedicating oneself to playing the cello, learning theoretical physics.
Things that make life interesting and diverse.
Exactly. The moral saint, whether loving or rational, has to subordinate all these things to the constant pursuit of moral perfection. Their life might become, in Wolf's words, strangely barren, lacking a distinct, engaging personal self.
So striving for total moral goodness, might actually make someone less fully human or less interesting.
That's the paradox she highlights. It suggests that morality shouldn't necessarily be this universal medium or ever-present filter that governs every single aspect of life.
It implies
Oh.
that it might not always be better to be morally better.
If morally better comes at the cost of sacrificing all other forms of human excellence and personal development, then perhaps yes. It raises deep questions about the place of morality in a good life.
That is a serious tension to consider.
It is. And it loops back to the need for coherence we mentioned. Your abstract theories need to make sense alongside your concrete judgments about what constitutes a good, desirable human life.
Okay, let's try to pull this together. We've covered a massive amount of ground consequentialism, like utilitarianism, duty-based ethics like Kant's,
Principlism, natural law with its doctrine of double effect, Rawls' contract theory focusing on justice.
and then the shift to character with virtue ethics and relationship-focused views like the ethics of care and feminist ethics.
And finally, how we might judge these theories, and this fascinating challenge posed by the idea of the moral saint.
All these theories provide the essential toolkit, the different lenses through which we analyze the tough issues in bioethics.
Absolutely. Understanding them helps you see the deeper reasons behind different positions on things like euthanasia, resource allocation, or patient rights. It's about understanding the why.
So if we leave our listeners with one final thought, building on that moral saint idea,
It has to be this. If pure moral perfection, the life of the moral saint, seems unattractive because it might crowd out other valuable parts of being human,
then the really hard question for you becomes personal. How do you find the right balance? Where is the point where striving to be more moral might actually start to detract from living a truly good, well-rounded, flourishing human life?
where is your golden mean, not just between virtues and vices, but between moral excellence and overall human excellence? That's something that brings all this theory right back to your own life choices.
A challenging question indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the foundational theories of bioethics. We hope this map helps you navigate the complex terrain ahead.